So, welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I am your host, Dr. Diane, and this is the start of a series that's very near to my heart. Many of you know that last fall I had the opportunity to travel to South Africa and work with the amazing team at Wild Tomorrow. For the next few episodes, we're going to be introducing you to this organization and really spending some time understanding the power of conservation to make a difference in this world. To start, we have John Steward and Wendy Hapgood, and they are the co-founders of Wild Tomorrow, and I am so excited to welcome them to the show. Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. John and Wendy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Diane, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Diane. We're excited to be here.
John and Wendy, you all come to this from a very interesting perspective because when you founded Wild Tomorrow, you were both in very different careers. How did you enter the world of conservation?
Yeah, well, I was in advertising. I was a creative director. I was working for clients like Volvo Cars. That was my main one for many years. And while I did love it, I loved working with teams, I noticed that I wasn't sharing the passion that people around me were feeling. And I decided that I was going to try something different for a while. So instead of going on vacation to Mexico or something, I thought, what can I do to make a difference in the world? So I started Googling, and I started Googling volunteer. I started Googling volunteer animals. That's literally the two words I put in. Animals have always been my passion, even though I was in the advertising world. And I found myself, through Google searching, in South Africa. And I joined an organization, a volunteer organization, that were monitoring endangered species. And in this case, when I went, it was wild dogs. So wild dogs, also known as painted wolves. And I joined a team, and day and night we would be out there finding these wild dogs because there were so few left in the world that everyone mattered. So we'd use telemetry, like an old TV aerial, to find these wild dogs, to make sure that they'd all made it through the night. Because if they hadn't, if they'd been caught in a snare, then the alarm would be raised and we'd see if we could find them because, again, everyone mattered. And while I was there, just everything, I was like a sponge. I wanted to know everything. And I think the people in charge of the volunteer trip saw something different in me than a typical volunteer. Because I was so curious. And I was like, but why this? Who that? When this? And that I think they gave back to me all of the effort that I was putting in to learn. And that started to change me. And I started asking these big questions like, what will you leave behind? What am I doing? And yes, I had stuff. I had watches. I had country homes, but why? But, I was learning so much about not only the beauty of wildlife, but also the perils and the problems that it was facing. So that started me on my journey to change my life. And over the course of 2 to 3 years, I'd kept up contact with this particular organization. I tried to work for them, but they said they couldn't afford me. And in New York. And I said, you know what? How about I do it myself? And then that leads into Wendy's story, I think.
Yeah. So I'd moved before meeting John. I'm from Australia originally. You can maybe hear it slightly in my accent. I grew up, I love nature. My family, when I was really little, had a sheep farm, and that's all I remember of my childhood is climbing trees and loving sheep and animals and not understanding I thought a sheep farm was for wool, but anyway. So I found myself, I studied science, engineering, and Japanese, ended up in Japan, and ended up working in finance and electronic foreign exchange, like currencies. And one day I was sitting at my desk and I was like, you know what? I was very, very unhappy. didn't intend to work in finance. I sort of ended up there, and it definitely was lots of great opportunities working around the world. But there's an Australian author, Bryce Courtney, who has a quote that I felt really encapsulated what I felt in my life at that time. He said, "So many people climb the ladder of success only to find it's against the wrong wall." And I really felt like that. I looked at the people around me. I looked at the people above me. I thought, I don't want to be them. I don't want to get paid more, to have more stress, and to feel so deeply unhappy. So I knew I needed to make a change. And then I feel like the world made the change for me. Literally, I was in Tokyo when the big earthquake struck. I was in my office and the world started shaking. And then I saw, I was on a trading floor. So there's the big screens. I saw this chaos unfolding, which was the Fukushima nuclear crisis. And what struck me, it was very scary to be in a kind of unfolding nuclear disaster, first of all, and to worry about taking a bath and thinking my water is contaminated, worried about going outside and nuclear rain. It was like really living in this dystopian reality. But what shocked me the most was people were like, in subsequent weeks saying, well, doesn't matter, nobody died. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, the earth, we've poisoned the earth for thousands of years, and you may remember in the news that the radioactive water was being deliberately, let out into the ocean, and people in California were worried about eating fish. I remember that. And so I felt like there was a lot of, I just felt like I personally wanted to undo some of that damage that we'd done. This idea that we had poisoned nature and not that many people seemed to care. So anyway, I ended up that day actually was my interview to move to New York, and I moved to New York with the bank. But this growing feeling had come that I needed to change my life and do something to help nature. And I was single. I met John. We met on Tinder. Places. And we were both at that same place in life of thinking, what can I do to make a difference? And for me, I had been in sales in finance in the bank, I was like, you know what, I want to be a salesperson for nature. I want to help, raise money really I was like, what can I do with these skills that I learned that I somehow ended up falling into finance? So I thought I want to be a salesperson for nature and help undo some of that damage that we've done. So then, it kind of fell together so well. John and I meeting each other and knowing really it was helping animals as well. I've always been in nature. I thought about all the things that made me happy in my life as opposed to the unhappiness. And it was being out in nature, volunteering, helping animals. I'd also done sort of similar things to John, volunteered at Elephant Sanctuary in Thailand. And those were the things that spoke to my heart. And I knew that was the direction that we needed to head in. And then John had that experience in Africa and South Africa, and you saw the rangers, while you were volunteering, right? Like you saw the gap that was needed to be filled, right?
Yeah, there was one very memorable moment that changed me. We would it's always stuck in my memory. Us volunteers, the four of us and the volunteer coordinator, would be out on patrol on the back of this Jeep. And we felt kind of special. We weren't tourists. We were part of the crew. And we would always pass the anti-poaching rangers. And they were very serious. They were in their camo and they had their guns and they were patrolling the fence line to keep poachers out because this reserve that I was on had rhinos. Specifically, the poachers were targeting rhinos. And we would always wave to them as we went by, and maybe they would wave back, but usually they just stared at us. But we knew they were, they were professionals.
Serious, yeah.
And we'd see them every day. And then I didn't see them one day, and I didn't see them the next day. And I asked our coordinator, I said, hey, haven't seen the APU guys. What's up? And he said, oh, I heard that they have just gone through their last set of tires. Because out there in South Africa, you get a lot of punctures, all those acacia trees. And he said, yeah, and they don't know when they're getting out again because there's no money in the budget. And I was like, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. I have money. And I patted my pocket. I had dollars. I said, let's get them out. Let's go.
Buy some tires.
Buy some tires. And he said, it's not quite that simple. You can't just give money and there's protocols. But the point was to me that, hey, I can do this. I just came with, it's not petty cash, but I just came with cash and I could solve this problem. It was a very tangible problem that I could solve. And then I thought, you know what? If I feel this way, I bet I know others. I bet I know one more person that knows one more person. And that was the beginning of Wild Tomorrow. We started to fill the gap that was not being filled, to help government reserves with objects that weren't typically funded or objects that were needed immediately. They were like these urgent issues.
And not very sexy for most funders, like a pair of boots or tires for a vehicle or batteries, or even the most simple things that were needed, like a flashlight, or I think I'm always laughing because it's kind of funny, but you're like, no one ever asks rangers, do you need a pair of socks, right? Like, so pairs of socks. And the learning that these protected areas, government funded, that are responsible for protecting, and it's a story around the world, it's not just South Africa, responsible for protecting biodiversity, these amazing parks, rhinos, elephants, sort of everything within their borders. Their operating budgets keep getting reduced so that the people on the front lines, the very last green line of defense for wildlife, the rangers, were, their boots have holes in them. Actually, they do a survey of rangers around the world, and it was something crazy like 50% of rangers have to buy their own boots, And it's so demotivating if you're that person risking your life or going out in the rain, going out at nighttime to try to do your job and to feel proud about it when you can't, when your shirt is full of holes. So that's how we started small with Wild Tomorrow, just raising fund. First of all, asking rangers exactly what they need, and we were guided by the volunteer coordinator who he worked with, who had seen so much in his time working with government reserves, that a lot of NGOs come in and say, we think you need a drone. You need a drone, and it's like, actually, if you ask them what they need, it's much better, obviously, and they're going to tell you before the drone, we kind of would love a drone, but actually we really need boots and we need...
And on top of that, when we asked the managers of these reserves, they said, don't give us money because we don't know if we'll see that money again because we have to report it. If you can come to the gate with boots, with socks, and give them to me, I will give them to the rangers. And that's what we did. There were so many fantastic people working on the ground in these reserves. Unfortunately, sometimes, and this is a problem throughout the world, sometimes the money isn't spent where it's needed most.
Right.
So as an NGO, we needed to, if we were going to be taking money from people, we needed to be sure that that money was going to where these people wanted it to be spent, because we're a public organization. We need to guarantee that the money, as much as possible, 90 something percent, there may be a little bit that's needed for petrol to get to the reserve. But apart from that, the money is spent on what these people want.
So
and I love the fact that you all actually, you did the things that, having come from a nonprofit world as well, you did the right things. You didn't come in with a solution. You came in with a conversation, and you actually talked to the people that you wish to serve. And instead of putting your own ideas onto it, you went with what they did. But I also love the fact that you've been very diligent about where the funds go and making sure that they make it into the hands. I was part of one of those deliveries when I was there, getting to bring boots to the rangers. And having followed them through the brush, I 100% appreciate the need for those boots.
Oh, that's so great. You got to deliver some of the supplies. We do the big World Ranger Day campaign, and then Tori and the team get the fun job of delivering and seeing the rangers so happy. I always feel like, not embarrassed. It's like, it feels so small to me. Like, I was on a delivery to False Bay, which is right next door to us, part of a World Heritage Wetland Park. And a few years ago, I'll never forget speaking to the head of the park. And he was saying the budget that he had to equip his rangers for the year for uniforms meant that he could choose to buy one thing. Like he had to choose to buy one shirt for everybody or one pair of pants for everybody. And so, we came at that time, it was things they'd asked for: flashlights, handcuffs, torches, shirts, uniforms. And, it's not a huge amount of money that goes into buying those things. I mean, but they were so grateful. Like, I just felt like I wish that we could have done even more.
Yeah,
We shouldn't, obviously in an ideal world, the government should have a proper operating budget for these reserves, but
we weren't just making their bodies more comfortable. We were raising morale. I mean, we can all think about when we put on a new outfit or we get a new haircut. You stand a bit taller, and that we were hoping, and I think we were successful in that, in giving them a bit more energy into what they do. Because if you don't feel like anybody's caring for you, then yeah.
And the job of the ranger is such an important job in terms of protecting the endangered species and helping not just the rhinos, but all of the animals. And it's good for the community as well. So standing a little taller makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you all have gone beyond. I mean, you're continuing to fund the rangers. You've got the Green Mambas, but you've also gotten into conservation and land yourselves. And I know when I was there, it was talking about, for the first time in 120 years, the dream is that the elephants will be able to make it from the mountains to the water. Can you talk a little bit about that process and how you wound up creating reserves?
Yeah. I think it's funny, as we didn't wake up in New York one day and go, oh, let's create a wildlife reserve. It started small with boots, socks for rangers. And then one day, we were about 1 year in as an organization, raising, I think our first year we raised $40,000, which was like huge, we thought. And next year, a partner who we'd been working with was like, you've got to come and see this piece of land. It's up for sale. This can't happen. Like 2 pineapple farmers had already put in offers to buy, and they would extend their farms and deforest everything and turn it into rows of pineapples. So we're like, I don't know what we can do about that, but we'll come and see. And we went. I think we got video of like walking there and seeing the land. And there were a few zebra.
Yeah.
It was very dry. We went down to the river. And there was, it was an older lady who owned the land that lived in the city. It was her family's farm. Her father had given it to her and her siblings. And then over the years, so she was wanting to settle her estate. So she put it up for sale. And the asking price then in US dollar equivalent was $1.3 million. So that felt like a lot more than a pair of boots. I was like, oh man, what are we going to do? So we thought, we went to see it, right? And I remember we were coming home. We went and we had a couple of, the first time we went to see it, right? We did see her. We got back on the plane and we were talking to each other. I was very nervous, like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to raise that amount of money? But we felt like we had to at least try, because what's the worst thing that could happen? We didn't, make it. But so I remember thinking, $1 million is a lot of money. But in New York City, it's like a studio apartment,
Right.
and like thinking about like the difference. This is like a piece of land.
It was 1,000 acres. Yeah.
In a global biodiversity hotspot on a river that feeds into a World Heritage wetland, exactly the spot you don't want industrial like farming and chemicals. And, it was across the river from the Manuana, the Phinda Private Game Reserve, that was a rewilding success story. So we knew it was possible to turn degraded farmland, it had been farmed partly before, back into habitat for wildlife and to rewild. But yeah, that was a huge number, $1.3 million. So I feel like we knew if we could just find the right people, if we could find the animal lovers of New York City and tell the story of this land and the home it could be for wildlife, that we could raise the money. So yeah, we started talking to people. And I credit my cat a lot for this. I had a beautiful cat Nobu, who had health problems, and he was so fierce if you took him to the vet that I found a vet you could call to your house, and her name was Wendy as well. She was from New Zealand. So we bonded and we told her about this land, and she said, okay, guys, give me your proposal. I will tell my clients about it, because she was already connected as a vet to a lot of animal lovers in New York City. So she told, who she could about it and introduced them to us. We had them over to our house, right? We had dinner, they come meet us, and we showed pictures, told the story, because we really needed people to give us not $50, but $20,000, at a time. And so we met several people who are still in Wild Tomorrow's sort of community now, and wanted to help save the land. And one of them is our now chairman, Seth Hendon, and he's like private equity, so like really understands how to make a deal. And he's like, we need to kind of make a deal here because we don't have the $1 million. So John and I went back to South Africa. We met with the lady, Mrs. Vessels, in her living room in Pretoria, which is next to Johannesburg, and told our story. And she definitely preferred that we buy it, for her to have the family farm sort of saved. But it wasn't conservation that motivated her. She said they used to farm some cattle there, and the plastic that they use in pineapple farming is really poisonous for cattle if they eat it. So she hated the black plastic and didn't want that. But she also said to us something really interesting. She said she was sort of confused why us, foreigners coming out would want to help save this land in South Africa. She said, don't you have your own elephants to save?
Yeah.
And
We did.
you answered
Yeah,
that.
we didn't quite know what, was she thinking that America had elephants? We wasn't quite sure. But we said, well, these elephants are not yours, ours, or theirs. It's the planet's. And yes, geographically, they are quite a long way from where we have chosen to live. But it's the planet's that,
Like a
and
global responsibility to try to save wildlife. Yeah. So we did a deal with her, and she knew, we said we don't have $1 million, but if you give us time, we'll raise it. And so she did. We had to make a deposit, and she gave us 5 years interest-free to raise the rest. So that was really a legacy we told of her, for her to do that for us. We said in return, you can name it, please. And so I remember being very worried because her first name was Dolly, that she'd say, I've come up with a name, it's the Dolly Conservancy. But no, thankfully, she chose the name Ukuwela. It was such a beautiful and meaningful name. Zulu word, which means to cross over, which was the vision of the land. Even at that time, that one piece was as a place wildlife could cross the river over into. So that was amazing that she gave that opportunity to us and left that legacy.
yeah. And then once we successfully protected Ukuwela, we rewilded it with a lot of the species that can't get through fences. So many species don't care about fences. The leopards, the aardvarks, the honey badgers, the mongoose, the warthog, they were there on the land, and they'd come from other places. And we in all of our homes around the world, we'll see raccoons or foxes walking down the street, and they don't care. But there were larger species like giraffe, zebra that we wanted to reintroduce, and we rewilded them. So once we had Ukuwela, the more we stared at the map and the more we spoke to people that had experience in the area, the more we realized that we were perfectly placed to create a corridor that could link our two neighbors. So the Munywana was one neighbor, and they are 70,000 hectares.
It's a private reserve, yeah.
Then there's a gap. We were the gap. Then you get Isimangaliso Wetland Park, which is UNESCO, and that is 800,000 hectares. And it had been a dream of conservationists for a long while to capture these pieces, these privately owned pieces that we were now looking at, to be able to join the two. So Ukuwela was one of those pieces. It's like a puzzle. But there was about another 8 or 9 that needed to be filled. And fast forward 10 years, we have now purchased every single one of those and taken down fences in between all of them.
That's just incredible. So you've done that in the last 10 years. What are the goals and the hopes moving forward? What still needs to be done?
Well, the fences are not dropped on either of the sides on the two. So all of our internal fences are now dropped. On the boundaries, the outer boundaries, they're yet to be dropped. And that gets into politics. It just gets into people. The more, the larger the project, the issues, the more care that needs to be taken. It will happen. It in humans' terms, it feels like forever, but in nature's terms, it'll happen. We're talking to them, and that's a relatively short-term project of ours. Longer term, there is still properties in the area that are contiguous with ours that we'd love to save, because while we have the corridor, if we can widen it, if we can protect pieces that bordering the UNESCO, we can help protect the wetlands, because these pieces that we want are active pineapple farms that are using pesticides, insecticides, that are leaching into the soil, that are going into the wetlands. And so while we have our corridor, there are still pieces that we feel are desperate to protect.
And I think just to add the science part, I'm sure your listeners all know, but just reminder that the number one cause of extinction, the mass extinction of wildlife, is habitat loss and also habitat fragmentation. So the way to directly address that challenge is to protect what's left and then restore these areas to basically regenerate habitat for wildlife. And if you can reconnect existing protected areas together, that's kind of pushing back against fragmentation. So you're reconnecting these wild landscapes so that wildlife can move through and exchange genetics. And that truly is the key to reversing or pushing back against the forces of extinction. So that is really what we're working on.
Imagine a space where curiosity drives innovation, where empathy fuels collaboration, and where learning feels less like a task and more like an adventure. My message isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about changing how you see the plate entirely. I'm Dr. Diane Jackson Schnorr, and through the power of purposeful play, I equip leaders, educators, and organizations with the tools you need to unlock creative problem solving, deepen human connection, and build resistant ecosystems of empathy and innovation. Attendees will walk away not just inspired, but empowered, with immediately usable strategies to spark curiosity in teams, to lead with empathy, and to infuse learning into their everyday cultures. You'll learn how play isn't child's work. It's the secret weapon of the world's most effective leaders and change makers. This is not a feel-good talk that fades by Monday morning. It's a movement, a shift in how we engage people, solve problems, and lead meaningful change. My talks and workshops are shaped by decades of experience in education and a transformative message that connects across sectors. Whether your audience is corporate, educational, or nonprofit, they'll leave ready to rethink what's possible, both personally and professionally. Because when we learn and lead through play, we don't just change organizations, we change the world. Check it out at drdianeadventures.com. I had two questions that sort of emerged as you were talking, and one was, how does restoring and widening that corridor help the wildlife? And the second question sort of tacked to that is, what impact does it have on the people, the communities that live there, and how are you bringing them into that project as well?
Yeah. Well, and another just statistic that blows my mind that I always think about to just set the scene is that if you take the biomass of the planet today and weight it, the living things, 96% is us, humans, and the animals that we raise to eat. So cattle and chicken and us and plants that we grow to eat. But so we've really taken up space on the planet. 96% of it is us and our needs, and 4% is wild. I mean, there's more cats and dogs. The weight of cats and dogs is more than like most living things on the planet as well. And I love our pets, of course. But so we've really taken up space. So we need to make space for wildlife. And the world is trying to align a bit like climate goals towards habitat protection to protect 30% of land for wildlife by 2030. And that's all to get to this goal of 50% protected. It doesn't mean without people. It just means that viable habitat for wildlife, because if we can get to 50%, then that's where we actually need to be to save biodiversity. Wildlife needs space as well. So that's the science. And then I think it's so hopeful because in regenerating and in protecting habitat, you have to restore it. And we have this amazing team of Zulu people, local people, 14 women, one lucky man, I say, the Green Mambas, who through their job, so they're employed full time with Wild Tomorrow. And these ladies have big Zulu families. They got a lot of mouths to feed. A lot of people depend upon them. They are often the only person in their family working. It's a very rural area where we are on the northeast coast of South Africa, where employment is like impossibly high. So every job is truly an economic lifeline. And so through their work restoring nature, they're also supporting their families and restoring their lives as well and reconnecting with nature. I mean, they're tough jobs. Did you work alongside the Green Mamba?
I thought I was strong until I worked alongside a Green Mamba, and we were pulling the invasive plants, and we're all trying to pull, and they just reach over and grab and toss it over their shoulder and laugh and move on.
I remember one day and it's not, I think, oh gosh, like imagine hacking out alien plants, what you might find, from spiders to snakes to one time a leopard under a bush, a sleeping leopard. I think it scared them as much as they scared it. And they called Kevin, our reserve manager, and said they wanted danger pay. They've actually come, seriously though, they've done wildlife awareness training to understand, like it's not an easy job, but they're proud. They're very proud to be Green Mambas and to support their families. And the other way, I think that's truly our greatest impact is, yes, on the wild world, but also local community. And we're so proud to put our community work really at the center of everything that we do. And we also work with 2 local kindergartens. So making sure or doing our best to support the youngest learners in the community. Early, we're not experts in this at all, but early childhood development is so important and really has a huge influence on your future outcomes as
Absolutely.
an individual.
That was
And
one of my favorite parts of the trip, I have to tell you. I love the animals, don't get me wrong. The animals were amazing, but to get to be at the creche with the little ones and to read and play soccer and paint the mural was amazing.
Oh, the mural you did was amazing. And what I loved about that too is that a PWA, our community manager, asked them what animal they want, what kind of artwork they want on their wall, which is in keeping with our philosophy, And I was actually very somewhat surprised but impressed they came up with rhino. Because, local people and the kids are so unfortunately distanced from nature. And these reserves, including ours, have big fences to keep wildlife in. And by law, you also have to. And I always felt it was deeply unfair that we as foreigners could come to South Africa and see rhinos and work hands-on with rhinos, dehorning. I know you did that too. And
Right.
see the zebra, see the giraffe. And yet the kids who live just down the road, it's like a 10-minute drive across the river, have not had that opportunity. And so, yeah, I was impressed that they chose the rhino, that understanding and knowing that that's such a important part of, well, such a charismatic species. It's why people come to visit. It's their natural heritage. So I think it's really beautiful. We have a dream that one day when our reserve has rhinos, that the community will name it. That they can choose the name of the rhino rather than someone else. So, yeah. We have the 2 creches and a PWA, our community manager, community conservation education manager, kind of noticed it was a little bit more like babysitting the teachers are volunteers. They haven't had the opportunity to go and train as a teacher, or especially not in early childhood development. So she found an NGO locally that specializes in exactly that, working with these local creches, kindergartens, to support them to professionalize and train the teachers and also give them the education and materials that they need. So I'm not sure when you were there, were you putting up, there was new posters and everything?
There were new posters going in, yes. I
So
think
that,
they had just gotten a couple of boxes of curriculum materials.
yes. So we were so excited about that. It's an investment in those 2 kindergartens. It's a 3 to 5 year journey with them on everything from how to manage a business, because they need to be charging for the parents a small amount for every child to come. They need to be taking attendance. They need to have the educational materials. So it's a real big, investment and support for those kindergartners to help the teachers be the best that they can be and to have the support that they need. And did you meet Jenny as well?
Yes.
So she came on board as part of that program. Jenny is from the local community, Mduku. She's amazing because she got her degree in education, actually specializing in ECD, early childhood development. She did it remotely, like through the South African local university. So part of the requirement for this program was to have someone who's qualified, has a degree in education, to kind of project manage and roll out the program with the teachers. So that's Jenny's role, and she's amazing.
And I think
So
the way that we work with communities, I hope, has the same thinking as the way that we originally worked with the reserves. We do not go in and say, this is what you need. We don't go in and say, okay, we have this much money, here's where you can spend, and we'll just hand you something. What we're hoping is for them to grow with us, alongside us, for them to see that we're partners. We're not a quote unquote charity coming with a truck to give them stuff. We're there to work with them, alongside them, to help protect nature and proving that they can benefit from it as well. And the Wildlife Conservation Center that we've proudly created, there's a lot of space, and we know a lot of what will happen at the conservation center, like offices and research facilities for universities. We also don't know a lot of what can be used for, and we will watch and listen and learn and find ways for the community to get involved. And one idea that came out of nowhere was Wendy and I went to a fair, a pop-up market in the US, and it was on sustainability, and there was a small booth that was showing how you could use plastics to recycle plastics and create new objects at a much smaller scale than had been that is out there at the moment. So we're like, what if we created this little workshop at the conservation center where we could have people, first of all, help clean up their community, because the refuse collection services are lacking.
there's none.
There's none. So that's number one problem that we could be helping with, is cleaning up their own community. We could pay them for their services. They could bring it to us at the conservation center. With our machinery that we could get donated by our donors, we could then employ people to turn that old plastic into objects that the community tells us that they would like. So, and we don't know what that is. And it's great that we don't know what that is. Is it a keychain or is it a brick? We will learn. And then from that, we'll do a proper business plan. But does the person that bring the plastic get the object, or do we then sell it to them at a token amount? But still, there has to be an exchange. They have to feel like they purchased. Are there people within the community that want to set up a business to then share, to go out and sell this stuff? So it's all of these projects like this plastic we can't wait for them to come to us. We will vet the ideas and we'll weigh up whether we think they can be successful. But that's what we love about Wild Tomorrow, is we are not there to do this. We are there to just go on this journey with our donors, with our supporters, with the community, and Wendy and I, it's our job to guide in the right direction to get to success.
I love that. And I was just thinking as you were talking that rewilding in and of itself is an adventure, and it's sort of a destination where you don't know for sure what the outcome is going to look like, but you do your very best and you get the outcome. You had baby giraffes when I was there in September, or they were in process of being there, and that wasn't there 10 years ago.
No. I love the rewilding movement and this idea that it's kind of letting go of control and seeing, well, firstly, very ecocentric, seeing humans as part of the ecosystem, not dominating over, and, restoring those complicated interactions between, bits and parts of the ecosystem. I feel like we don't even understand how complicated they are. So restoring, rewilding is thinking of the ecosystem as a whole, not focused on one specific species. And that idea that ultimately you kind of take your hands off and let nature be. And to see those giraffe having their little babies, that to me, the giraffe calves, the baby giraffe are symbolic of everything that we've tried to do. To see them, they love Ukuwela, that first piece of land that looks like grassland. I mean, that is because it was farmed for pineapples long ago, decades ago. And if you from a drone see it, you can see the furrows that were the lines of pineapples. But when you're on the ground, it just looks totally wild. And that's the giraffe love that area. And to see those baby giraffe being born is so symbolic of everything that we're trying to do. And if you protect space for nature and you give it space to just be, it will restore itself. So we don't need to buy wildlife anymore. The giraffe, the zebra, they are kind of rewilding themselves. And those little beautiful calves just mean everything to us and show people what is possible. And I think, we're just two people in New York who wanted to make a difference. And we had so many people who donated in the beginning, to save 1 acre. And that idea that you could save 1 acre yourself, donate your Facebook birthday and raise $1,000 it was to buy an acre. Or when we were having to buy wildlife to rewild, people would sponsor a zebra or sponsor a giraffe. And that knowing and feeling as an individual in the face of these huge challenges, like thinking about climate change or mass extinction of wildlife, or I don't know, the poaching of elephants, it feels like you're so disempowered that you as a person, you're like one little drop in the ocean, but you are one drop in the ocean. And I think that we've seen it, like collectively what people can do. You have individuals, buying an acre or sponsoring a giraffe or, sponsoring the Green Mambas. And it all adds up to this really big, beautiful outcome, which is seeing now this nature reserve. And now it's like a corridor, like it started from one piece and now it's a corridor. And when we started, it was John and I and 2 scientists in South Africa. Now it's John and I in New York and another 1.5 people. But in South Africa, we have 50 in our team now. We could never have imagined that. So, together with the Green Mambas, we have 10 rangers. And it's a similar story that they supporting their families and extended community through their jobs that they're very proud of as rangers, protecting the reserve and the wildlife and being ambassadors for the wild world. So
there's such good ambassadors, and as you were talking, I was also thinking, you started with that one bit of land. Actually, you started with socks and you started with boots and the volunteering, but the biodiversity is stunning. When we're taught in America, and we're taught about South Africa, generally everything's lumped into Africa anyway. Our geography is abysmal and we're taught habitats and biomes, and you're taught to largely think that Africa as a continent is the grasslands. And what I found stunning in my time there was just in the space that you all have. You have the sand forest, you've got, the grasslands, you've got the river. There were so many different microcosms of habitat and different animals specialized in each place. And that for me got me thinking about how do we raise awareness in a world where people lump things together. And as you said, 4% maybe currently is space for the wild. If you couple that with the mentality that, it's all one thing, penguins live in Antarctica and lions live on the savanna of Africa, and we don't know those nuances. How do we educate people so that they care, so that they see beyond the gloom and doom of the headlines and want to be a part of something like this, whether it's in South Africa or whether it's in New York?
I think people get lost in that big, big picture of doom and gloom, and it feels so overwhelming. But if you take it down to the individual, you can help this, or to the specifics, you can help save this piece of land, or you can help this individual, like a green mamba, or, you could help, in our case, we don't need to do this now, but sponsor a zebra. It feels very tangible, the difference that they can make. But to get to that point to where you care, I've actually thought about this a lot. Why do I care? Why do you care so much about the wild world and other people don't necessarily? I've thought about it. Would I risk my life to save a rhino? I think I would. I want to say I would, I feel it that strongly. I think there's a point where people connect to nature deeply, and that could be walking every day in nature, like you're going to your local park. For me personally, I think it was connecting to my pets, where you have that certain animal in your life that becomes your best friend, that you connect really deep level. It's not every animal that you or that you have the chance to get to know, but I felt like I loved my cat so much. And then through that, you see the rest of the wild world in a different way. I don't know what your connection was.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the question, but I think for our generations, let's say anybody that is 40 and above, we care so much because it's something that we've always loved that we're now hearing is in trouble. So what first happened was we loved it. And then we heard it's not doing well. So we go out and we want to save it. Anybody, the younger generations, if you start immediately without the love and you just start with the problem, I don't know what happens. Do they want to protect it? Because we care so much, because it's like one of our family being threatened because we fell in love. So we have to make sure that they fall in love. We can't lead with doom and gloom. For as long as possible, I don't know. But for as long as possible, let's try and not taint their love with, oh, by the way, did you know there's only this many left? Because I don't know what happens to somebody then later that all I know is how we came to this is that there has to be this wonder, this just awe, and this deep connection to these other animals.
Which is where I think your group comes in so beautifully, and Haley and John Rocco, who inspired the group of children's book creators coming to immerse yourselves in conservation, to take those messages and that beauty and that awe and inspiration and put it in the books, kind of get into their little brains and minds and hearts early on. So I think about the impact people like Jane Goodall or David Attenborough had, and part of it is that they were communicators first and foremost. Well, Jane Goodall was a scientist first, but the huge impact they had was because their books and the TV and the images and just being, the communication. So that's where the storytelling, I think, is so important, and getting into young minds and hearts.
And I think you're right. I think that a lot of it's a combination of things. It's the being out in nature, leaving the classroom, and even if you're just taking a walk around the block with a magnifying glass and spending time in the grass looking at ants, you're building a connection to the natural world. If you are able to bring in, when I had my preschool, we brought goats in. When we read the Three Billy Goats Gruff, there was a goat farmer in upstate New York who would bring goats in to play with the kids. And I feel like, you're building that sense of love and awe and wonder. We lived close to we had a zoo that was attached to a prep school. And so the zookeeper would actually come in, and for my children, he would bring in some animal ambassadors and they would get a chance to meet them. But then he would invite them out to the zoo at the end of the year. And some of these kids had never been to this zoo, but we would do our end of year picnic out there, and they would get a chance to walk around with their families and fall in love in this natural environment. And it's sort of the more opportunities we can create like that for children. And I think some of it is through the pages of a book, because I know I've lived in places where kids have never left their community. You know, they lived an hour from Washington, D.C., and they had never been to the capital city. And, you know, that's where books can take you places. You know, television can take you places. The work that you all are doing, especially when it's shared, can take you places. And so it's finding ways to help people, I guess, touch it and feel it and be part of it. Yeah. And so I hope that this series of conversations we're going to do with Wild Tomorrow will help people to begin to experience that and feel that they too can be part of your journey. Which leads to my second to last question. If people want to be part of your journey, what are some ways that they can connect and be part of the Wild Tomorrow family?
Well,
we have many ways. Perhaps the crudest or the coldest is to say that we have a website with a donate button, and
it's important.
Yeah, and we give people the option to choose an area where they would like to help us. Is it the community? Is it wild spaces? Or is it helping protect these key species that we're protecting, like rhinos? That's our organization it's fueled by donations. But there are so many other ways to get involved with us. That we have events around the world that physical. So we have Team Elephant, and Team Elephant is our marathon runners and our half marathon runners. And if you are a runner, you can sign up with us. And we have marathons in New York, Tokyo, Paris,
Berlin,
Sydney,
Cape Town.
We're really excited to bring people into our mission through this activity.
Which is outdoors.
Yeah, we
train outdoors. And I'm always so proud because a lot of when you cheer on the runners, it kind of reflects philanthropy. Like in the US, if you look at the pie of giving, and Americans are very generous, amazingly generous, and supporting so many worthwhile causes. If you look at that pie, however, it's like 3 to 4% is this category, environment and animals, which is dog and cat shelters, climate change, conservation, 3 to 4% of giving. And I think it makes no sense to me. We cannot have clean air, clean water. We can't have human health unless we protect ecosystems and biodiversity. But anyway, so I'm very proud when you see runners running, a lot of running for human causes, which is great and very personal. But for our runners, having the elephant on their shirt, it really stands out. And people say, oh, we had a little kid, right? Because we were at this on the sidelines in New York City for the marathon with a big sign, Team Elephant and the elephant. And a little boy came up to you because he said, Mom, I want Dad to run for elephants next week.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people choose our team because they look at, which charity can I run for? And they see all the logos and then they see the elephant and it really stands out. So they're actually choosing definitely to run for nature. So we have hundreds of people around the world doing that. And then, of course, a really direct way to come and help is to volunteer, which speaks to the roots of our story. And it changed John's life, changes many people's lives too. If you have the ability to do so, to sign up, come volunteer. Our volunteer programs are 2 weeks long. You stay at the reserve. It's not like bunk beds. And I think a lot of people think of volunteering as kind of this student-like activity. Trips are definitely in the middle between, like, very comfortable.
It's the best food you will ever eat in your entire life. I'm still dreaming about Lucky's food.
Oh, we have the best Zulu chef ever. Lucky is amazing. And yeah, so it's great food, very comfortable accommodation. You have your own bedroom and bathroom. Maybe you share with one person, but it's a mix of sort of ecotourism. Like you get to see the site. You can't come all the way to South Africa and then only see our reserve. And we have partners, so you go visit partner reserves, see the rhino orphanage, go to the World Heritage Wetlands, see the beach, have a beach day. So it's really a kind of vacation that's giving back to nature in many ways. But you get hands-on and you feel like, I mean, you could attest to this more than me, Diane, but like that you feel like part of the team. You're working alongside the
Absolutely.
rangers, you're working alongside the Green Mambas, but it's also very educational because you're learning about their jobs and about what it takes to restore habitat.
Which goes to one of our core missions is to rewild ourselves. We can rewild the planet, but we also need to rewild ourselves. And there's no better place than being on the ground with us in South Africa to begin that rewilding journey. So
I love that.
yeah, we please, if you'd love to come, we'd love to have you.
Or if you're a children's book creator, sign up with the CBCC group. Such an amazing group of people. Like I
really is.
vicariously lived through our social posts when you guys are out there. Like imagine like these amazing artists and creators and writers, like, you know, on top of there was this one trip where they're on top of the big truck that had the zebra
Yep.
and
I remember I actually
sketching.
just had Candy Fleming on the podcast because she had such an amazing year this year with all of the awards. And we spent half our podcast talking about Wild Tomorrow and the work that she's doing and the work that we both love, but her current book, which is all about poaching. And that was born out of her trip. She went the time before I did, but that love and that desire to tell the story of the rhinos and the complexities of the poaching story is emerging in her next book.
Very excited about that.
And then another way that if people would like to be a part of Wild Tomorrow is to attend one of our events. Most are on the East Coast, based around the New York City area, but we have a very nice gala at the end of the year. We have spin events. We have a comedy night. So,
and this year, we're excited. In April, we're doing, although it might be, we're going to, hopefully it's every April. It's new this year, Pause Against Poaching. So getting people who have their beloved family pet dog to walk, do a virtual dog walk to raise money to help the
I
canines
love that.
in Africa. So these are the dogs that are working and work with their rangers to protect rhinos specifically in these wildlife reserves. And they're, you know, as a team, they're very underfunded. The first year we asked them what they needed, just write a list, small to big. And on the small end was like those canvas dog bowls. So when they're out patrolling or on, you know, working with the dogs in a nature reserve, that they have these portable water bowls so they can give their dogs water. So we're very excited. Just the idea, you know, in New York City, we've got pampered pups you see, especially in winter, with their little shoes on,
Yes.
and their jackets, and they've got multiple jackets of different fashion, you know, but to have those dogs, you know, of course, they're human behind them, walking in solidarity kind of with the working dogs, the canines of South Africa that work really hard and actually risk their lives too, these dogs, to try to save rhinos and protect their rangers. Like
Right.
I was talking to one of those rangers. He was saying how much, first of all, you see the bond they have with their dog. They actually put their life as well in the dog. When they're deploying, it's usually nighttime when poachers come to the reserve to try to kill a rhino. And the dog's deployed. Can you imagine running in a wildlife reserve that has rhinos, elephants, you know, dangerous animals, and it's nighttime. So what I didn't realize, not only is the dog on the trail of the poacher using their nose, it's also aware of wildlife around them. So it will take the ranger, they will go obviously on a path away from danger on their way to danger, which is trying to find a poacher. So that just blew my mind. So these dogs, you know, are just so incredible to watch, and they love the rangers and the rangers love them, and they actually really are just so bonded. So to be able to support them, I think, is wonderful, and to get the dog lovers involved, but it also raises awareness. Like we forget that people don't know why rhinos are getting killed and the role of rangers.
So one last question for you all, and it gets back to what we talked about at the beginning. What currently brings you hope?
You want to go first, John?
That in 10 years, we have gone from my mum and dad giving money, Wendy's sister, to now having thousands of people. I mean, it's not thousands of people, but, you know, yes, thousands of people interested in what we say and ready to give their personal time, or their talents or their money to help get to where we're going. That's what gives me hope, because we honestly feel quite a lot of the time people say, wow, I can't believe 10 years what you've done. We feel like we've done nothing. It's for other people if they would like to say yes. And maybe one day of the year we'll celebrate ourselves or what tomorrow. But we've barely started. And there's no, I know that those few thousand that we have now will turn into multiple thousands, because I know the care is out there.
Absolutely.
And for me, truly the symbol of hope is seeing new animals, little babies born at Ukuwela, in the Greater Ukuwela Nature Reserve. The giraffe are definitely one of my favorite, but just know, to me, it is so symbolic of what we're trying, of the work that we're doing, to take degraded farmland and restore it to nature, and for it to be a place where wildlife is thriving. The giraffe are thriving. We have babies born every year. And to see that, and I was thinking about when we first went to see the land, and when we first started our habitat protection work, we never saw warthog. They weren't warthog at Ukuwela. Very rare. Now when you go, you see them all the time, and I love them.
They're amazing.
The families, like that to me is hope. And it represents the idea that we can, as individuals, create this beautiful change. It seems like an impossible dream. Like, who would think you could create this extra, take space back for wildlife and see nature return? It is very possible. It's like that regeneration. So that is the hope that I see, and that the people around us and part of the Wild Tomorrow community are feeling that too. Because if we all give up hope and we are just despairing of nature and the destruction and the gloom and doom that is absolutely around us every day, then that's the kind of, we're not going to solve it. But if we can see that we can make a difference, what I say, hope is taking action, and really see as an individual the impact that we can make. Yeah, I think that's the future. And doing it locally, small scale, kind of create something much bigger.
Well, and thank you for creating a vehicle for us to actively live in hope and do something about it too.
Oh, thank you so much, Diane. And thank you for having us so that
it's been
story
delightful.
can be heard by your listeners.
You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think. And please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.